Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm an orienteering coach, and today we are going to be talking about how to prepare for the start that you really care about. We're going to be talking about many different things, but mostly we're going to be focusing on the day before and the day of the start itself. So this, of course, is not all, because there are many things that should be done before you get to that point, but this is the material for another talk, another video. Now, as a bonus, I might add that somewhere along the way, we will also mention how to deal with a hangover. So this is something for the older audience, maybe for senior runners like myself, masters. So if you sometimes get into troubles with a little bit too much alcohol before the next stage of the 5-day event, for example, you might find something interesting just right there. So let's begin. As I've mentioned, preparing for an important competition has to be taken seriously way before the night before the competition, right? So of course you should be learning all the orienteering skills you need. You should be analyzing the terrain. You should be preparing yourself with all the way possible. But we're going to leave this aside for now because we want to talk really about how to get prepared for the race the day before and just during the competition itself, during the day of the competition. What are the things that are important during that period of time? And I wanted to start with the recent event that happened during the Jaywalk planned races for 2022, where we and the team, we were preparing for a really rough conditions when it comes to temperatures. And I'm pretty sure that during many of the important events that you will be starting at, this is also going to be the case. So sometimes we get to start in the conditions that we are really comfortable with. Like, for example, for me, this would be something between 15 to 23 degrees. These are the range of temperatures which are totally fine, and I don't really care about these temperatures at all. If it goes lower, it's still pretty okay, but if it goes higher, then it gets a little bit too hot for me personally. I am the person that prefers rather low temperatures than high temperatures. And this will be, of course, individual, but many of you will also have problems with high temperatures. In Portugal, well, we didn't know what the weather we should expect months before the competition yet, but we knew there are chances for very high temperatures, so we were of course preparing for that. Now, the preparation is of course mostly acclimatization to high temperatures, but what can you do then the day before the competition? Of course, the most important thing for high temperatures is to stay cool and stay hydrated, right? So to stay hydrated, you need to drink a lot of water, and this is so important before every major competition you have, actually before every competition you have, so that you get enough fluid into your body in order to keep it going even through longer distances. My personal experience is that you can't really go too far with water if we are talking about the day before the competition. And not the morning before the race, but the day before the competition. So when I'm preparing for a race that I know is going to be happening in high temperatures, my goal is to drink enough water to keep me going to the toilet at least 2 or 3 times in the evening. And usually I also have to wake up somewhere during the middle of the night to visit the toilet again. That's the sign for me that I'm well hydrated, right? Of course, then during the morning before the competition, I still keep drinking, a lot less than the evening before, because my body doesn't need anymore. I mean, not anymore, but that much fluid anymore. But of course, you should still keep yourself hydrated and carry the bottle of water with you all the time. Another thing that we thought might be really cool when it comes to water is to have a bigger spare bottle of water which you can actually pour over yourself to cool yourself down. So that's another thing you might be thinking about when dealing with high temperatures. The next thing that is very important apart from water is of course the mindset. So you want to prepare yourself for the competition the best way you can in your head. You want to keep yourself motivated. You need to keep yourself engaged, you need to keep yourself focused and avoid any distractions that you can avoid, right? So what I'm talking about here is, again, it will be a little bit different for many different individuals. So you need to test what works for you and what doesn't. So for example, some people might prefer to stay quiet during the evening, might prefer to listen to some music, might prefer to analyze the old maps of the terrain maybe, or to pick their brain with some puzzles, maybe route choices, right? So these are the things that you have to definitely consider, but the general idea is that you have to find a way that keeps you calm and focused and motivated about what's going to happen tomorrow. So ideally, if you have your goals, for example, written somewhere, read them. This is a great time to take another closer look at your goals and remind yourself what is this thing that drives you, what is that thing that made you put so much effort into all the preparations that you've done somewhere in the past to get you to this point, right? So take care of your mindset. Now, another thing, the next one that we are going to, is the map familiarity. You should again revisit the old maps of the terrain, if they exist, of course. If you're running, for example, a sprint competition and there is a newly made map of the sprint area, which sometimes happens during the competitions of the higher magnitude, then again, it's a good time and good moment to revisit it, visualize it maybe a little bit, again, build some courses to find some interesting route choices, try to figure out where the start might be, when the finish of the arena might be. Usually arena actually is given in the bulletin, so you don't have to figure it out, but the start very often is not, so you can pick your brain around that area. But all in all, remember what the map is all about. You probably have been training for this terrain already, or if it's more leisure competition but still important, you know the characteristics of the terrain and you can figure out what will be the most important navigational features or navigational orienteering ways of finding your way in the terrain, right? So for example, let's say that we are running in Sweden, right? So one of the most important things to watch out during the race, I've been recently to Ringen, so I will refer to the terrain around Uppsala. I would say that using your compass was very important over there, right? Because keeping the direction helped a lot. Another thing that I'm always looking for over there are the marshes. I think like I kind of can see them, and I can see the borders of those marshes because there is a little bit different navigation, so this is a good navigation feature. So I'm reminding myself, let's look for marshes, for example, and use them as a navigational feature. Another thing is that there are lots of rocks, right? And some of the rocks are not on the map, some of the rocks are on the map. If you have spent some time in the terrain, you will know that, for example, rocks higher than 1.5 meters will probably be marked. Another thing is that there are rock walls as well. And rock walls are much better, have much more visibility than rocks themselves, right? So there are kind of these things that you have to go through to remind yourself what is going to be your navigational strategy in that particular terrain, which features you're going to use to navigate, which features will be the most visible and most helpful, therefore, for you to finish the race with the best possible time. Another thing that not everybody is doing, but I think it's definitely worth considering, is to create a list of things that are going to be happening before your start. So that's the task that you're doing the day before, but this task is for the next day, right? It's not for the day before, it's for the next day. And what I mean by that is that you can write down the times of things that need to happen before the race. The usual items that will make to the list will be something like, I need to start my warm-up at this and that time. I need to prepare for the warm-up, for example, 10 minutes earlier. I need to arrive at the start 10 minutes before the start. I need to get into the boxes. I need to, for example, tie my shoes or retie my shoes or plaster my shoes if you're doing that, right? Let's make sure that I have my number with me, for example. That should be probably somewhere at the beginning before you go to the warm-up. So things like that will definitely be helpful when you feel like you're going to be stressed the next day and you might forget about something. This is mostly important for younger runners because they get distracted more often. So the older you get, the more experience you have, and you kind of really already remember about all of that stuff. But it happens that sometimes things get a little bit unusual. So I'll give you an example that happened to me like 2 weeks ago. We were at the competition in Czech Republic, and in Czech Republic, it's customary that the control descriptions for your control description holder, you take them at the event center, not at the start, right? So those of you that have visited Czech Republic, you will know that this is how it is. And you need to remember about it, right? Before the start, you need to go to the event center and take your control descriptions or ask someone to bring them to you. And because I live in Poland, we go to Czech Republic quite often, so I'm kind of accustomed to it, but it's still something extraordinary for me. So I have to remember about it. And it happens that sometimes I go to the event center, I take the control description, but I put it into my pocket and then I forget to take it out of my pocket and I'm running the warm-up. Suddenly I see that I have no control descriptions, or I realize that in the starting boxes, which is even worse, right? So there are things that sometimes are a little bit away from your normal routine, and then this should definitely make it to the list as well, right? If you're participating in a major competition like World Championship, European Championship, there are again some other additional things that might be very important to note down in that list. So for example, what time the quarantine starts. If you're going to the quarantine by bus and it's mandatory, what time does your bus leave, and so on, things like that, right? So, again, even going a little bit backwards, you might be also writing down what time do you actually need to eat your breakfast, because this is something that you should be planning as well, right? So this is the list. The list is, the main goal of the list is to help you figure out the things the morning next day, so that you are a little bit less stressed about forgetting things. So of course, it makes sense to keep the lists from the past so that you can copy things from those lists from the past. That will also make you more confident that you're not forgetting something. And of course, your general list that you're reusing can grow. So you might be just adding more and more things to it. And then when you're actually making the list for a specific competition, you'll just take your general list and then say, okay, this is not needed because that's not the type of the competition, and this and this and this, right? And then your list is ready. So that's totally recommended. But one more thing that I want to add is that when you're doing these kind of lists, you can also put on those lists some key strategy clues, for example, for you for the next day. So this is something we've talked about before. So like the main navigational features, your main strategy for the race, some motivational phrases over there on the list are also welcomed. So things like this can also be applied over there, and they will definitely be useful because then you can read them before your start and again get reminded about the most important things about what's going to happen in a few moments. One more thing about the list is, of course, you should also add to the list your items that need to be packed. So whatever you need to take, also think about it the day before and put it on the list so that the next day when you're packing, you don't forget anything. And for example, you get let onto the bus because you have your accreditation and your starting number, and you're not forgetting them, or you can forget, for example, your running shoes. That has happened to some people I know. Many things can be forgotten when you're stressed in the morning. Get a list, get it done, easy. The next thing, so important, is take a good night rest, okay? Easier said than done, right? At least for some of you. So again, this is a little bit individual, like many of the things, because some of us have easier way of falling asleep than others. Some of us sleep harder than others. Some of us get woken up very easily. Some of us just can sleep through all kinds of noises and parties around us, and we don't really care. So depending on which category you're in, you will either have to take some additional steps or take care of your surroundings, or maybe not. Maybe you just put your ear to the pillow and you fall asleep and you wake up in the morning all fresh. Congratulations to you then. So definitely make sure that your sleeping environment is free of any kind of noises that might disturb your sleep. If you're sleeping in the room with other people and you feel like you might be the first one going to sleep, just talk with them about it and tell them that this is important for you, and I'm sure that they will respect you and let you sleep and go to sleep early. If you know that you're stressed before the competition and you want to get a good night's sleep, but you're afraid that you will not be able to go to sleep, then a good thing is to put away all the electronics like 2 hours before going to bed. This separates you from the blue light that those computers and your phones emit, and it also helps you fall asleep and then have a more natural sleep patterns as well during your rest. I know that some people, for example, are inclined to go into pills for better night's sleep. I'm not sure if this is such a great idea. I think it's better to actually work on other things, more natural things that you can do to help you sleep better. If you're stressed, then you of course can work with the psychologist, you can talk with your coach, you can talk with your friends. So it's actually better to figure out what's stressing you, because this stress will not go away because of the pill. The pill will just let you fall asleep. The sleep quality after the pill is not that great as well, but if you wake up in the morning, this stress is still there because it's in your head, so it's not going away. Therefore, you will still have to deal with it before the start and during the race. So I think there are more consistent ways of dealing with this than just taking a pill. That's just my opinion. All right, so we're finishing the evening before and we are moving on to the day of the race. You're waking up in the morning, you've slept well. Of course, it's time for breakfast. What do you eat for breakfast? You eat, of course, something that you have already eaten tens or hundreds of times before the competitions, and you know it works. So for some of you, it might, for example, be some bread with jam. For some of you, it might be porridge. For some of you, it might be something else. So whatever works for you, it's probably a good idea to have before the race. How much time before the race should you eat? That's totally individual. So you have to figure it out way earlier than the day of the competition, of course. Usually eating 2 hours before the race is already too late. I would say that if you don't know, then 3 hours prior to start is generally a good idea. But some of you will have to eat even earlier. Some of you are okay to eat later, but maybe, for example, a little bit less. So this has to be something that you just know because you've already tested it and you just now apply it before your competition. Now you go to the competition, things that definitely need to be done when you arrive at the spot is to look around the arena, if you have the chance of doing that. Sometimes you're just going straight to the quarantine zone and you don't have this privilege, but if you arrive at the arena, then it's good to have a look around, figure out where's the finish, where's the last control, how is the run into the last control, how does it look like, is it wide, is it narrow, is it long, is it short, right? So these are the things that will help you later on. I usually also take time to look around at the higher things that are surrounding me. Sometimes there are buildings, sometimes there is some kind of a tower, sometimes there are just tall trees, for example, that are distinguished on some side, right? So I'm looking around because I want to have a visual perspective of how the arena looks like from the most iconic points of view, so to say. So that when I leave the forest and get into the field where the arena is, I can just look around, find the most distinctive feature and quickly visualize where I need to go. So this is what I'm doing. I'm not saying it's super important, but I think it helps, especially when you don't know, for example, which way you will be coming from, because the last control is maybe not set yet. That probably would happen on smaller competitions. Anyway, what you definitely want to do is to have a good warm-up. So the warm-up is important before the race because you want to get your body running on higher gears, and you want to, of course, avoid any kind of injuries that you might go into if you skip the warm-up. So it's always a good idea to have the warm-up. The length of the warm-up, it depends on your preparation and your form and your abilities. I mean, physically, how good you are, your personal preferences as well. And I would say also the manner of the race itself, so whether it's a long race or a short race. In general, the shorter the race, the longer the warm-up should be. When I'm talking about different athletes from around the world, usually they are preparing for the sprint for between 30 to 45 minutes. The middle distance, the warm-up for middle distance is usually between 25 to 35 minutes, and the warm-up for the long distance is somewhere between 15 to 20 or 25 minutes. So that's how it looks like on average, but of course you can take your own numbers and apply your own numbers if you need to. Now, how the warm-up should look like, I think that, again, you should do what you're used to doing, and something that kept you going in the past and you felt good while starting and going to your first control. So just try to remember the warm-ups that you did back then and apply them over here. I'm inclined to have the warm-up when I'm moving a lot and I do very little static stretching. So I'm usually starting with fast walking or slow jogging at the beginning. It depends on how stiff I feel. Yeah, I'm a little bit old, so I feel stiff in the morning sometimes already. But then I jog for some minutes. Then I do some exercises, but while moving all the time. So these are like motion exercises, stretching exercises, but all in slow movement. So it's not while running, but it's maybe while slowly jogging or just while walking. Like I might be waving my arms, waving my legs, things like that. I do a little bit of static stretching, but it's like maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And that's mostly for my calves because I've had problems with my calves before. So I'm just trying to do some extra stretching over there. And then if I feel like I need to, I also do some running in the terrain, especially of course for the forest races. So I try to get off the track and run through the bushes, run on an uneven terrain to let my ankles also feel that we're going to be running not on the asphalt. They are usually used to that because I run on the asphalt very little, but I still like to do that before the competition. And of course some intervals, some short intervals, rhythms before the faster race where I feel like I need to go fast, because this is what tells your body that it needs to prepare for a high intensity race that is right before you. But again, you should take your own warm-up into the race with you or before the race with you, and make sure that you're doing things that you've already done in the past so that your body doesn't feel different this time. Usually the more repetitive your warm-up is for these kind of situations, the better, because you can focus on the race itself and the map itself, and the warm-up is kind of automatic. You know what to do after exercise, one exercise after another, so it kind of just follows the same pattern and you can focus on other things. Should you be listening to music during the warm-up? I don't know. I think it's, again, individual, and some people might like it, some people might not. I personally don't, but if you feel that music helps you calm down and helps you get into the right rhythm, the right mindset, the right focus, then absolutely use it, right? So there's nothing wrong with it. Another thing that I want to mention that came to my mind when I'm thinking about music is how to avoid being distracted before the start. So I've been working with many athletes at this point, and I've met the whole spectrum of people that either are very focused before the start and very calm and very quiet, or they just behave normally up until the point where they actually start mentally focusing for the race, which happens, for example, 10 minutes before, 15 minutes before, or just during the whole warm-up, right? But there are also some people that are, super closed inside their own world, even from the day before, and they don't talk with anyone. They just react when they have to things. And my opinion is that the first approach is actually probably better. So what I mean by that is that if you need to keep yourself so super quiet for such a long time to have a good performance, it means that you lack the ability to focus in a short period of time. And that's usually bad, because imagine a situation like this. You're doing everything you can to keep, all the distracting activities, thoughts, and people away from you, but there are some things that you cannot control, right? And let's say that right before the warm-up or even during the warm-up, somebody comes to you and just starts talking to you or bumps into you by accident, or and 100 other things can happen that just immediately make you fall out of your super intense focus, right? So now if you needed all of that time to get into focus, first of all, you feel immediately super frustrated. Second of all, there is a risk that you won't be able to get into the same state of mind with the time that is left before you start. So I personally think that it's way better to practice focusing for a shorter period of time. So I think that you should behave normally before the warm-up, definitely. During the warm-up, again, I think that last 10-15 minutes is a pretty good time to actually start thinking hard about what's going to happen in a moment and what you need to do and how important it is to you and all the steps that you need to take to get you to the finish line with your with the ideal pace and time, right? But doing all of that 6 or 5 or 3 or 2 hours before the start, I think it beats the purpose, right? Of course, getting the right mindset is good, but just pushing everything away because you're so focused on the race, this is not perfect, I would say. I definitely favor the ability to focus instantly or quickly rather than super deep focus that you can get very easily out of, and this is out of your control. Okay, so another thing that I recommend doing when you get to the place where there are starting boxes is to check the time over there to make sure that everything is okay with your watch, if you have the watch, because sometimes watches are not allowed, I mean those with the GPSs. So just control the time, that's what I mean, right? Make sure that you don't get stressed because you're, for example, a little bit late or, God forbid, a lot late. So you don't want to do that. Therefore, you want to make sure that everything is as it should be and there is no delay. Sometimes it's like 1 minute delay and it already might cause a little bit of distraction, a lot of distraction actually. But it happens very rarely. So probably even if you forget it, it's not a big deal. Everything should be fine. The other things that I like doing before I get into my starting boxes is I'm starting to think about how the map needs to be positioned and where am I going to find myself on this map? Where is the start going to be? So what I do is I look around and look for big features that will be easily identifiable on the map. Maybe there is a big field nearby. Maybe there is an asphalt road. Maybe there are some buildings, right? So, I also try to figure out which part of the map we are running at, right? I check the north and I think, okay, we are next to the asphalt road and I know that the asphalt road is going all the way over there and we are going to be running over there in that direction and that is the north. Therefore, I'm probably going to be situated somewhere at the south of the map. So this is the first part of the map that I'm going to be looking at while I'm trying to locate the starting point, the triangle, right? So these are the things I'm always thinking about before getting into the boxes, start boxes. Then in the start boxes, of course, you do the clear, you do the check, you make sure that everything is fine in the first box. In the second box, you take the control descriptions most of the time, and I usually also check the controls descriptions in the box to see if there is anything unusual in the descriptions. On the sprint race, I always check the corners of fences or walls or hedges to make sure that, or to locate the places where it might need my attention. So for example, if I will see 5 corners, the controls are on 5 different corners along the way, and only one is outside, I will remember it. I will remember that, for example, control number 17 is an outside corner, but the others are inside, right? So then it helps me during the race. I just check, okay, corner of the fence, I know it's inside, and I don't have to spend additional time searching for an answer to that question. And I also usually try to remember 2 or 3 first control numbers so that when I start the race, I can actually comfortably get to the control and make sure that it's mine. Although I totally recommend that even when you do that, it's still worth taking just a glance at your control descriptions if you're holding them on your hand, to make sure that this is the right control, one way or another. So that's box number 2, and then we go to the final box, where this is the box right before you start. Sometimes there are maps in that box, sometimes there is a run into the maps. It really doesn't matter, because I'm not thinking about the map in that box. I'm actually using the time given to me in that box to do the last preparation for the start, which is visualization. So I do a very short 30-second visualization combined with some deeper breathing, because deeper breathing, as simple as it is, it helps you calm down, so all the emotions are going a little bit down, and then visualization helps me get my head into what's going to happen in 30 seconds. So I'm thinking about exactly what's going to happen when I hear the last beep of the clock. I'm going to start. I'm going to grab the map. I'm going to quickly find the triangle or the starting position. I'm going to locate the first control. I'm going to figure out the best route choice for the first control using the attack point, and of course taking into account all the different route choices that might lead me to the first control. If, for example, I expect that the first control already might be a long leg, I think that maybe I should, for example, stop myself if I know that the way to the start is short. But in general, I try to visualize the first steps that I'm going to take in the race. This visualization needs to be always positive, and this is kind of getting me into the race already. So when I open my eyes and I hear those last beeps, I'm already in it. I start, I grab the map, and I know exactly what to do, because first of all, I did it 100 times before. Second of all, I just thought about it exactly step by step. So this is like an automated thing that is now happening to me, and I get into the flow of the race, and I just take it from there and continue. So this is everything when it comes to preparation for the start that I've prepared in this video. That's probably not everything that you are thinking about. So I'm pretty sure that there are things that I've skipped over here because they just didn't get onto my list, but they are still important. If you think that there are things like that, let me know in a comment. So maybe we will, for example, gather all of those things together and record the part 2 to this one. But now we need to get into the part where we talk about something that is maybe not that professional, but also important. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, it does happen that sometimes the party was a little bit too attractive, and you find yourself going to the race with a little bit heavy head, with maybe not so settled stomach. And what can you do in these kind of situations? So I'm not an expert in that, although it has happened to me once or twice, but I've asked some people, and these are the advices that I got for them. I'll just read them to you and share with you everything. And I'm not saying that I agree with all of those, but this is coming from experts, so it has to be true. It has to be true, I don't know. There's no other way. So the first one is pretty straightforward. You need to tough it out. Just brave through it. Be tough about it. You might not feel great, but if you start running, you grab the map and you feel the moss under your feet, it's going to, all of it is going to come back to you, and it's going to be good. Or not. Who knows, right? The second one, this is a good one, I think. So people say that there is a perfect sweet spot just before sobering up. So if you want to hit that sweet spot that is actually going to maybe even enhance your performance during the race, who knows? There are two things you need to do. So either don't stop drinking too soon, or have another beer or a glass of wine in the morning to get you up and running, right? So these are the two different things that you can do to find or try to find that perfect sweet spot. Another one is don't drink. It's pretty simple. Don't drink or use non-alcoholic beer, right? So I don't know, this one is probably coming from people like me that prefer to have an evening without an alcohol or little alcohol. They actually don't probably get into troubles like we're talking about. So we will just scratch we will scratch this one out. It's not important, really. It's not important. The next one, we have two more, right? But the next one is an interesting one as well. So one person wrote that you need to have, and this is absolutely crucial, at least in his case, you should never even think about going to the race without taking a proper number 2. As simple as it sounds, it might not always be achievable. So you either take a proper number 2 and then you're good to go, or you just give up. You don't go into the forest unless you fill the whole toilet. And the last one, the top of the crop, it's a recipe for the magic juice. So one person said, take 1 raw egg, half of squeezed lemon, second ingredient, some salt, some pepper, and a glass of water. Mix it all together and drink it. So, I don't know myself, it feels like it's not going to help unless you're not trying to keep it in, I guess. But maybe someone brave enough will try it and let us know. Alright, and that's all I've prepared for you today. Thanks a lot for listening. If you have anything to add to the list, as I said before, please leave a comment. If you think that this video helped you in any way, leave a like under the video. And if you're not subscribed, also subscribe to the channel because it lets us know how much interest there is in these kind of topics and it keeps us going. So thank you very much for staying. If you've stayed to the end, congratulations and see you in the next video.